Hey guys, so how is it every shoe commercial right now looks amazing? If you're like me, you wanted to figure out how to do these thread animations in a simple way. If that's you, you've come to the right place. So let's get knitting. Hey everybody, it's Dave from Grayscale Gorilla, where we give you the tools, training, and tutorials to make yourself a better motion designer. So what are we doing today? What we're going to do is we're going to jump into Cinema 4D. We're going to use X particles to make some cool thread animations. If you check out in the description below, I linked to a project that I had done for the Nike Air Jordan sneaker. And we're going to take that example, we're going to make it together today. I came across this cool idea using X particles to make a kind of weave flowing pattern with some trails, some stuff like that. We're going to color it, going to light it in Octane. That part's going to be simple. It's going to be more about the technique to get X particles to kind of move more in a thread-like motion. So let's do this. All right, no time to waste here. So let's jump into X particles. Let's start making some of these threads. First thing we got to do is determine how the particles are going to move. And so when I started looking at the Nike Flyweave pattern, it had a cool little like swirling up and down kind of effect. And that's how they were kind of laying it out, the references that they were showing me. So let's start out. We're going to just figure out how to make that geometry, how to make a wavy piece of geometry first. So I'm going to go in here. I don't know which way I'm going to scale it yet, so I'm just going to keep it as is. And let's see what we're going to use. I think maybe if we go into our deformers, let's try. Actually, you know what? I think we can do an effector. Let's see if we do, instead of the deformer, can we do a formula effector? And I'm going to grab this and I'm going to instead, I'm going to change it on the Y direction, I believe, and let's say points. Okay, let's change it. Let's maybe increase this a little bit more. I see that we are getting something. It's definitely not facing the direction that we want it to. So we're gonna play with this a little bit. There we go. It looks like we want to move it in the Z, not in the Y. All right, so this is going to be starting to get this wavy effect that we want. How do we control this though with the effector? Well, I don't really know. Let's start typing in some numbers here. I'm going to type in 4,000. Okay, so this is exactly what I want. You know, sort of, kind of. I need more segments in my geometry here. So let's just, okay, that's fine. Let's keep it, let's put the height segments at 100 and let's jump back in. So I want to actually dial down this number now. Okay, so maybe like 4 or 5, something like that. All right, maybe less, maybe something like 2 or 3. Yeah, 2. I like 2. And so this is where you guys get to play as well. So I'm going to make my X particle system move along this surface. And so however you want it to move, maybe you want yours to kind of corkscrew around or something, right? And so you're going to build the geometry accordingly. And then I'm going to show you how we can attach those X particles onto it and have it move how we want. So I'm going to just resize this guy here, probably make it a little bit longer. I might actually go in here now since I made it longer, because, you know, depending on what look you want. So these are going to be a little bit bigger of waves. I think I want them to be a little bit tighter. So I'm going to increase this number here. Maybe make it like 5,000, whatever. The numbers aren't important, right? Because you don't want to have to follow a tutorial and just type in the exact numbers. It's like, well, what's the look you're going for? So, you know, you don't need to feel like you got to do exactly this number. Go for the look that you want. The next thing I want to do is, where can I control the speed of this? Because I want to turn that off. So what controls the speed? Okay, so if you drop down in the effector, the variables, I think maybe if I made the time 0, let's see if that, yeah, okay, cool. Because if it's at 1, will it move? It moves. So drop the project time to 0, and there we go. Now we got a frozen piece of geometry, and it's still parametric. We don't have to make it editable. So I'm going to do the same thing. Because we're going to need 2 pieces of geometry here, because I want it to look like there's 2 pieces of different threads, and they're weaving in and out of each other. So I'm going to copy and paste this and go into. I'm going to start labeling stuff. Let's call this bottom, and this to be the top. All right, cool. So now I'm going to go into the formula effector on the top here, and I'm just going to make this formula a negative integer here. And this is what we're going to get, right? And so it's the same thing, just flip the opposite direction. So I'm going to start moving my X particles along the surface. For now, I'm going to hide this top layer. Just going to look at this bottom here just so we don't get too distracted. So next thing I'm going to do, go right into X particles and simply grab the emitter. I'm going to move this back in space here, and I'm just going to rescale it more or less here. Kind of get it up close. I don't think it has to be perfect. And about the same width. Again, I'm not measuring anything. We're gonna make sure that to our eye it looks good. All right, so now we're emitting particles here. I don't want a constant stream of particles. You know, if it's threads building on, I just want kind of like this one shot of thread. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into the emission here, and I'm going to change the emission mode from rate to shot. I don't really know how much to count I want it to be yet, so let's just leave that at default and we'll come back to that. So after I got the emitter, I need to go into my X particles modifiers. I'm going to go down to my motion, and I'm going to say follow surface. This is going to allow the emitter to particles to stick to the surface of this object once we have it set up. So first it's asking for the object. So let's go and drag the object into that. And let's play it. Okay, well that's exactly what we hope would happen, right? So now we're moving X particles along this weird little bendy plane that we got. So we're going to be able to replicate some movement here. So I'm going to select this emitter again, and I'm going to add X particle trails. All right, so now we're going to be sweeping, or tracing rather, these particles along the surface here. Cool. I'm just going to extend my timeline a little bit. Let's break this down. Go to 200 here, and I'm going to do 24 frames a second. All right. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. All right, so you know this looks cool, I guess, right? But you know what can we do to plus this, right? That was really quick. All right, so there's a couple things. One, I don't really want the particles just to be stuck to this surface. And so before we do that, because I want to tweak both of these at the same time, the top and the bottom. Right now, we only did the bottom. So I'm going to start labeling all this stuff in just a second. What you're going to notice, though, is if I copy and paste these, even though in my follow surface, I can put the top in here, and I'm going to delete the bottom. And in my trail, it's already set to emitter 1. I can call this emitter top. And I can call this emitter bottom. Even though that inside my follow surface I have the top, and the trail is linked to the top, watch what happens even when I go to play right now. Let's see. There you go. See? Okay, I was hoping it was going to mess up. For a second I didn't think it was. Let me hide these planes so you can actually see a little bit better what's happening. They're somehow getting confused, and I don't know the reason why that is. I do know how to fix it though. I guess the follow the surface is interfering with each other because they just don't know what particle system to go to. So we have to tell them what particle system to go to since we have more than one piece of geometry. So in the emitter, I'm going to start with the emitter bottom, and I'm going to go to groups, and I'm going to say create and add group, and I'm going to call this bottom group, and I'm just going to drag it down because I like to try to keep a little bit organized here. Then I'm going to go into the follow the surface and place this into the groups affected tab, right? And I'm going to go into the trail and do the same thing, place that group directly in there. Now we're going to repeat this step, and we're going to do it for the top emitter. So I'm going to say go into the emitter and say create and add group. I'm just going to rename this. I'm going to name it top group. All right, so now I'm going to go into that follow surface, drag it into the group affected, into the trail, drag it into the group affected. And now it should work how I'm hoping. And it looks like it does. Okay, cool. So just that easily, watch out, look, see how quick that was? We now have this system kind of weaving itself for us. So already we're getting a pretty cool little look. I'm going to start getting my interactive, my little Octane render region set up here. I'm gonna actually shrink down my my window here too, so you guys can actually see the whole thing before we continue to go. You probably didn't see when I was dragging these into the groups affected, but you know where it is. Okay, cool. So let's get this next part going. There's a little something I'm working on. You guys get to see a sneak peek if you're watching this tutorial the day it's posted, because I'm not gonna. I still got a little bit of editing left to do on this guy, but this will be a fun little animation. All right, let's get that off the screen. Okay, so we're gonna want to start previewing this here soon. So the first thing we want to do now is I'm looking at these guys, right? These strands, and they're just too uniform. You know, there's not enough play in them. One, I don't want just a solid edge. You know, I want there to be a little bit of randomness. So I'm gonna go into the emitter itself. I'm gonna backtrack here, and I'm gonna go into emission. And here's the speed. I'm fine with the speed, but I want a little variation to it. So maybe let's just start out with just a little bit, and I'm going to make the variation of these different. And so maybe this one can be 15. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, right? This is all to taste, so we don't really know what we want until after we see it. That is definitely not enough randomness whatsoever in speed. So let's really increase these. Let's go 50, and on the other emitter I'm going to go 65. Let's see if that's got any randomness now for us. Not a whole lot, to be honest. I'm going to hide this top one just so maybe we can focus on this bottom for a minute. Just so, like, I want to see why it's not actually changing the speed. It doesn't look like there's any randomness at all, actually, which seems a little weird. Let's just crank it all the way up. Why isn't it randomizing, guys? The speed is uniform right now. I'm just gonna X off everything. Bottom group, okay. So what's the deal? We'll have to figure this one out. Hopefully yours is working. I don't know why mine, there's no variation in the particle speed when it emits. We'll come back to that for sure. The next thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to start adding some turbulence in here. So let's go in and let's go to modifiers, motion, turbulence. I'm going to drop this down just so it's all below this bottom group. And in the turbulence, I don't really want to affect much of the Z, but X and Y would be pretty nice. Let's see if that does anything for us. Oh, and I'm going to add the group into it. Bottom group. Okay, cool. So we can see that is doing something. It's not particularly doing what I want. It looks like maybe the scale is a little bit too high. So let's drop this scale down. I want to get a little bit more. Yeah, something like that. That's probably still a little bit too strong. Maybe lighten the scale up even more. Maybe dial the strength down even more. I just want them not to feel so uniform and kind of cross over each other a little bit here and there. I might even dial this down even more. Maybe something like 2. Can we do like 0.2? Yeah, all right, let's see if that's something. Okay, cool. So just that way they aren't so uniform and straight. You can kind of see that they kind of get a little bit closer to each other here and there. I might increase this just a little bit. Let's say 0.5. Let's see if that's a good enough randomness for us. Yeah, that's more like what I want. You know, you can see right here that they actually cross over each other a little bit. It's subtle, right? But it's just enough to have a little bit more organic feeling and not so computerized. I really want to figure out why the heck this emitter isn't working how I would think it would be. Must have messed something up. I don't really know. So anyway, though, what we're going to do next is we're going to look at this follow surface. And for the follow surface, I want to offset it from the surface of our like plane with our formula effector on there, because I don't want it to just be one flat thread, right? Again, I want it to have some offset to these particles. So I have no idea what it's going to be yet. Let's put in 10 in there. And oh, we need some variation for sure. So let's add some variation here. Okay, so 10 is way too much. Let's go down to let's go to 2. 2 is way too much. So like reduce this variation as well. Does that do anything? Yeah, that dials it down a little bit. Let's go to 1. Nah, I gotta go even lower here. Let's do point. Let's go 0.2. Let's drop the variation distance as well. I think that's, yeah, contributing to it here. Let's go offset 1. So I'm just like tweaking stuff until I kind of get a look that I like, right? There's no right or wrong here. It's just like, okay, we'll look at it. What do you think? So let's try a little bit more variation in here. This is looking kind of cool now. This is more of like what I was thinking, right? So now it's just not a solid straight line. There's actually a little bit of depth to that. So I'm going to do kind of more or less the same thing to this other follow the surface. So I'll do 1 and 2 on this. Turn it on, offset by 1, say variation of 2. Let's just turn these guys on again. Awesome. And you can see if I select one of the trails that we're getting, this is starting to look even more and more kind of like threads, even before we started rendering it. And so although I'm going to do this in Octane today, it really does not matter. You know, I mean, we're making splines here. You know, we're doing trails on particles. So it's really easy to render this with hair, with any render engine that you're using with this kind of technique. So I wonder if I messed it up when I changed the frame rate. Maybe I'll go back in and change this to 30. I wonder if that has anything to do with just the particles acting weird, and if there's a setting in here. I don't know. Let's like play this again. No, they're not doing nothing. I don't think, at least. They all look, yeah, they all look like they're about started around the same point, I think. Oh no. Maybe that's what it was. I might have messed it up with that. Because look, now they're offset from each other. Okay, let's go into this emitter. And let's go back into the emission. And I'm going to increase the variation here all the way up to 150. Let's see if that helps us out. I mean, they're offset, but not by a whole heck of a lot. Maybe if I, you know, that turbulence I put on here, maybe if I do Z as well, that'll kind of slow some of these particles down. Just not really, not how I'm hoping for. What the heck, guys? I don't know. Throw in the chats for sure, because I actually have not experienced this not giving me this like any variation on my emitter, right? I'm used to it really offsetting it right now, unless I'm just blanking and I'm skipping something, but I just don't think so. Motion inheritance, no, it would definitely be the speed and then the variation of that. Maybe I'm just not giving it enough time. Could that be it? I mean, it's still looking just super super congested here. I mean, it is offsetting. I just thought it would be a little bit more extreme. I don't know, maybe it's a time situation, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to go to this emitter and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to crank that puppy up there, and let's see. So we got follow surface. We did all those settings right. We're offsetting it now. We just want to give it something that feels more organic and not so computer generated. And let me throw in a camera, and I want to get, you know, some sort of like cool little epic view going here. so we can get some nice little depth of field and some other stuff. I'm going to throw in an HDRI environment, and I'm going to also throw in a texture environment. So what I am going to do now is let's set this guy up, right? So this HDRI environment, I'm going to throw the HDRI link on there, of course, got to use that. I'm going to just set this up. I have no idea what texture I'm going to use yet. Since this popped up, let's just use one of these for now. Sure, we'll try it. Actually, let's get something with a little bit more directional sun going in it. Cemetery Noon. Let's see what that looks like. The next thing is this sky. I'm going to change this from primary to visible, and I have no idea. Let's make it some sort of gray. All right. And in my camera setting, I'm just going to keep the camera focal length at the default. Like I said, it's not about that. It's more about getting this thread appearance and aesthetic right. So let's jump over into, I'm going to turn autofocus off. Let's just see what this is looking like, even before we're texturing it. Yep. I'm going to go through this texturing process pretty quickly here, I hope. Where are you, threads? Oh, I probably can't see them because I don't have anything on them. Man, oh man, I need to get some sleep. Okay, so let's set that up. Let's go to Octane here, and let's throw on an Octane object tag, and then we need to go to hair and check on render as hair, and we need to do this to both trails. Now we should see some hair, even though I didn't put a material on it yet. There we go. Okay, so with these, I want to change the tip thickness to maybe, let's say 0.5. Have no idea yet. Might want to go even smaller than that, say 0.3. Cool, you know, and this is just a taste, right? It's really what you guys want to do, however you want to do it. Now let's make some materials. So we can use just some standard materials. So I can make, let's get some glossy materials though. I'm going to throw some roughness on there. Say 0.5, I don't know, maybe 0.1, and we can do a simple texture, right? Like we could make a simple texture in here. What color should we do? I don't know. Let's do like some sort of like turquoise color, some greeny turquoise. Trying to think of some cool little Nike shoes. They're always doing these vibrant colors now. So we could simply throw this on to our objects. And this is totally fine, totally acceptable. But you're going to see it's going to start looking really uniform and really not all that nice. I'm going to just crank this depth of field up here. Let's see. Cool. Sweet. Okay. Get a little shallow depth of field going. Right, it's getting there. I mean, this could look like threads eventually, but it's not really there yet. So let's get two different tones of materials in here, and let's just make this one like a dark gray black kind of color. Let's throw that on the other particle system. Okay, so already this is starting to feel more like a woven pattern, right? So I can kind of scale down and go back, right? And you can see that each time we're getting more and more, you know, of like what we would think is this kind of woven pattern, up close macro shot of this Flyweave. You can see there's some faceting and stuff like that. Obviously you guys all know how to fix that now. If you go into those splines, you can change that here by changing this type and then changing the intermediate points and stuff like that, and really get them smooth. But it will definitely increase your simulation time when you're actually when you're simming it and playing through in the timeline. So I'm just going to keep mine down for this tutorial purpose. But do know that if yours is like faceting or not as smooth as you want, just change these things here, and you'll get more points in there, so you don't see any sharp edges. Okay, cool. So I'm digging this, right? But I'm like, I kind of want even more variation in there. So I started playing with one of the actually built-in Cinema 4D effects, which was, what did I do? Checkerboard. I think it was checkerboard, yeah. And I took the checkerboard and I turned the frequency of one of these yeah, completely off. So it was like this. And then let's change these colors. Let's do this like lime minty green for this one. And then let's do like another variation to that lime green. Let's just do something a little bit darker. And that's going to break up this repetitive pattern. Like you can see right here that these strands are a little bit darker, right? And again, it's just giving it more of that organic, natural type of feel that you wouldn't necessarily get if you had just one solid shader. But that doesn't really reflect the materials of the shoe. You know, the dye picks up differently in different parts of the fabric and stuff like that. It's close, but there's a little bit of variation and contrast all within there, especially within the Nike Flyweave, which was the project that I worked on for the Air Jordans. And so I had to take that shoe texture and really figure out and really dissected each one of those threads and what they looked like and how they responded and how they would look with you know, a macro photography shot or micro photography shot. So we're going to do the same thing for the diffused on the black. I'm going to go and say surfaces, checkerboard, and I'm going to make this one the same way, but I'm going to do a couple different shades of black here, right? Like a black and a dark gray. Let's make this one a little bit darker so we can see a little bit more difference in it. Maybe make this one even lighter. Make this one even darker. Okay, cool. So you're seeing we're getting a little bit of variation in here now as well on this guy. I might make this guy a little bit darker too, though. Make this one full pure black. Okay, and this is just going to break this up, and you can see maybe one of these frequencies is better to use than the other to help with the variation. I don't know. I think it might have a little bit to do with the orientation in which you're going. Maybe checkerboard might look cool. It doesn't seem like that's really doing anything to me. This one does, though. I see a handful of nice little hints here. I'm actually going to swap these. I'm going to make this one the dark one and this bottom one a lighter gray. I think I like that variation a little bit better. Cool. Yeah, I like that variation more. Okay, cool. So now we're mixing these textures and it's all starting to get a little bit more realistic. I want to change though the way the hair is looking. I kind of want it to be feel a little bit more thread-like. I'm going to make this number a little bit smaller so that the tips of them don't feel so flat, right? Okay, so this is getting to be more thread-ish to me. I like this. I like this a lot. All right, so what else can we do? Well, let's just take a look at our lighting. Well, first I want to make this background be a little bit darker here. Cool. That's kind of right. Right, we're getting that kind of thread look. And the awesome thing is this set up for animation. This is all ready to go, animation style, which is fantastic. So you got a rig already set up, ready to go. This is pretty much it, guys. But I want to keep reiterating, you know, keep refining this, make this yours, keep pushing the style of it, you know, wrap around different objects, whatever it is that you want to do. Try different colors, you know, try rotating one the opposite direction, right? Like let's just try it real quick before we end this guy. I'm going to pause this. Let me take this plane. I'm going to take this whole thing, this whole one group here, and I'm going to get out of this camera and I'm going to rotate this guy 90 degrees this way. And let's just see what this looks like. I have no idea. And this is what I'm saying. Just play around with stuff. You never know what the heck it's going to look like. I might have to resim it. I don't know if the splines will come over. No, they do. Right? So already, you know, and I mean, I feel like I'd want to put more particles into this. So let's do that too. Let me increase some of this. So in my emitter on the top and on the bottom, I'm going to say let's emit 3,000 particles each. And let's just wait till this kind of catches up here. Right, so you can do a different type of weave. You can have multiples of these particle systems kind of colliding like we're doing right now. And just see what the heck it looks like. There's no rules here. All right, let's see what this looks like. So now we're getting like a different kind of fabric pattern. You know, you're starting to weave them. So you guys can come up with a lot of different ways. And nothing says that our surface has to be patched like it is or wavy like it is. You guys can come up with a lot of different weave ways on particle geometry. Sometimes it's a little harder to control particles, at least for me, just because I'm not as smart with them more or less than a lot of people who do particles. So you kind of come up with other ways. I'm like, well, I know how to manipulate geometry really easily, and I know how to stick particles onto geometry surface. So how could I take that to the next step? So there you go, guys. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe and make sure to share what you guys are making. Play with X particles. Don't just make what I made. Don't just make what tutorials make. Figure out the techniques, play with it, explore on that, and keep on creating. See you guys soon.